Hello and welcome to Thank You Five, hosted by Strawdog Theater Company. Thank You Five is a weekly panel discussion on the topic of what is theater, where we bring you theater artists from around the globe in a conversation about live theater in a digital world with a spirit of gratitude and innovation. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can head over to strawdog.org-thank you five and join our chat, ask questions, vote on which questions you want to have our panelists answer or ask new ones. And speaking of panelists, let's meet tonight's guests. Our first guest tonight, Tom, do you want to take us through introductions?
Absolutely. My name is Tom Burch. I am a scenic designer and educator currently based in Charlotte, North Carolina. I spent about a decade, 10, 12 years in Chicago as a freelance designer and a grad student at Northwestern. And I had the good fortune of working on a couple of shows at Strawdog back in the day. And as I said, I'm primarily a scenic designer. I also have sort of, over the course of the pandemic, shifted some of my work into writing and directing and working in puppetry and puppet theater. And yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. I believe I'm now supposed to pass it on to Spencer.
Hi, my name is Spencer Huffman. I'm a playwright and director and sometimes actor based in Chicago. I'm an ensemble member at Bramble Theater Company, and let's see, I spent the last year. Last year I got back in June, and I was there. Let's see, from September to June of last of 23 to 24 in Budapest, Hungary, where I was working on a new play and doing research about fear in groups and self-censorship, which are sort of two big topics that I've done a lot of work on. Yeah, excited to be here.
I think it's me.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Em, why don't you take it next?
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Em, or Modaf. I use they, them pronouns. I'm based in Chicago. The first professional show I ever did was at Strawdog, 2013. We did Big Love, and yeah, so Strawdog has like a really special place in my heart. And right now, I'm just writing some music with my fellow actor and friend Zoe DePreta. We are making some art for ourselves these days. And I will throw it over to my beautiful and talented partner, Jack.
Wow, what an intro. Hi, my name is Jack Seho. My pronouns are he, they. I am an actor and teaching artist in Chicago. I've been here since 2015 after leaving undergrad. With Strawdog, I had a show that we were going to do, and then, the panorama took over. So unfortunately, that had to take a back seat. I am, however, slotted to join in another production with Strawdog later in the summer of 2024, which is exciting. Currently, just doing my best to work. I'm teaching at a on-camera studio called The Forge that is in Ravenswood. So come check it out.
Nice. Thank you all. Thank you. Wonderful. And Jack, I got to say, I think I like panorama. I think I prefer now that we can see all of it and how it's all played out. Panorama feels like a Panavision. It feels yeah. All right. So every week we sort of start this off with the big question, and the question is, what is theater? Like either full stop, or what is theater to you? Spencer, why don't you start us off and we'll go around again. And feel free to be as literal or poetic as one feels they want to be.
Well, I can give you a kind of I can give you brief answers of both, like a literal answer. I'm I think that theater means that there's some kind of action happening in front of some sort of audience, and it only happens once. And then from a sort of a less literal standpoint, I think about theater as a means to help make sense of things which are otherwise very difficult to make sense of by sort of other methods, so be it like scientific or philosophical, right? They're the theater is attends to those problems better than other systems that we have, and that's what makes it essential, and what can make it so beautiful. So yeah,
Nice.
pass it to anyone.
And why don't you take it?
Yeah, that was beautiful. I literally Googled what is theater before this. Because it's I don't think about it that often. But I think for me, it is a safer way to feel, period. I can explore. I kind of relate it. I'm also a tarot reader, and so the tarot works with the fool's journey. And I think that if you really look at almost any piece of theater, you should be able to fit it in there as an interpretation or a retelling of some part of the fool's journey. And at least for me. And so yeah, it just feels like a safe space to like, yeah, play and laugh, hopefully, make yourself uncomfortable, make other people safely uncomfortable, but life is hard and scary, and I'm a sensitive little flower, and so sometimes it's easier to feel my feelings when someone else has given me the words and the permission to feel them openly. And then I can, like, compartmentalize that and keep it on the stage and then go be a human.
What is the fool's journey?
Oh, great question. The fool's journey starts, so in the tarot it starts with the fool, and the fool is fully innocent, doesn't know that stoves are hot, spontaneous, just like full potential. And then we make our way through things like conscious awareness, inner power, love, success, failure, death, transitional periods, hiding away, being extroverted, temptation, addiction, tragedy, hope. And we end up with the last card is the 21st card, called the world. And that's when all of the parts of ourself have integrated, and it feels very full circle. It's a something, it feels universal. If you look up the fool's journey, whether or not it's related to tarot, you see every part of our existence in there, which makes me feel a little like not unique, because we're all going through this same fool's journey. But I find a little bit of comfort in that.
Love it. Let's see. Jack, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I love that about the fool's journey. And I was thinking of like, what's a concise way of saying what I think theater is, and it feels as if that is essentially saying it, but I in other words, I will say that to me, theater feels like experiencing human emotions and showing human emotions and being a part of human events. It feels like it is just a performance of human events for others to see. That's what I would say.
that sort of dovetails a little bit, pardon me, with mine. I'm a college professor, and so I actually ask this question of my students a lot in terms of what's their connection to theater as an art form. And I always, at some point in the semester, especially in a couple of different classes, sort of ask, so what is it? And a couple of years ago, a student sort of came up with what I really, really love as a concise answer. And so I'm going to read it just because if I attempt to paraphrase it, I'll sound like an idiot. But they defined it as theater is a place to experience and practice empathy for another by learning their story. And I really kind of love that definition, because I think that that's one of the things that stories do is it allows us as an audience member to set aside our own life experiences, experience someone else's experiences, and then connect them back to our own. And that to me is what makes theater and storytelling as a whole magical. So that's kind of where I land with it at this point.
I hope they got an A that semester.
Yeah,
I could remember their name. They were brilliant.
that's so nice.
But that's the thing about being a teacher is that, I have 30 students at a time, and then they cycle through so fast. And then all of a sudden they're out in the world doing great things. And I'm going, I know that one. And that's exciting to me.
Those are great answers. I like that they're like sort of all over, right? Like that there's a genius to the fact that they're all over, right? There's a sort of genius to me of theater in that itself is like such a mosaic idea. So thank you each for those wonderful little pieces of the mosaic tonight. Now, to dig down though, here's a different question. What is theater now that we have entered the digital age? And that can be the post-panorama digital age, or I'm totally stealing that. You're going to hear it a lot tonight, frankly, that we've now entered like the post-panorama stage, or, just the digital age in general. How does theater, what does theater mean to you in the digital age?
I'm still deciding whether or not I'm happy about it.
What do you mean happy about it?
Like it gives there's so much more do you remember when Zoom readings happened like every day in the beginning of the panorama?
Yeah.
It gives us more opportunity, more avenues, more reach. But there's something about being there that just can't be replaced. And not to say that the digital world of theater replace anything, but I think I've just had too much of it in the last 3 years, and I just need a break. And also, I think maybe I'm just thinking about self tapes right now and how much I hate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I agree about the self tapes. I hate seeing pictures of myself. Trust me, seeing myself on the screen right now is very low on my list of wish lists. But that's because I'm a designer, not an actor or performer. I have such love for directors and writers and performers, and I am none of those things. But like you, I think what makes theater so vital is its liveness. It's being in a room with 30 other people or 1,000 other people and witnessing something together and having 30 or 1,000 different experiences with the same story that makes it so wonderful. Can you do that with the film? Well, yeah, kind of.
For sure.
But there's something different about just the energy of a room. And when you're seeing something happening live in front of you, one of the conversations I've had with some of my students is, the theater was not killed by the Black Plague. It came back stronger in a very different form and evolved and keeps evolving. And for me, this question of theater in the digital age, it's added a different layer to it. and it's never going to go away. We're going to continue to have variations on digital theater, or film TV, which have been digital for a while, but it's deepening the experience and trying to reach out to people that sometimes don't feel that that same liveness is important. So there's, I think, an interesting balance at play, and I'm curious. I missed not being in a room with people and working over the course of the pandemic. Panorama, sorry, and it's been so fun to be back in a room with people again, and I missed that so much. Just want to keep doing that again.
There is something to say for actually, to kind of contradict myself, the accessibility aspect of digital theater. So many people who maybe didn't even know that they would enjoy a play can watch one online. And like in Chicago, all the theaters are on the north side. Like, and if someone doesn't want to travel up to the north side and they don't care if it's live or not, they can still see theater. And that's really nice.
Yeah, I guess that's I would say that about the digital age of theater is like, let's use it as a way to, it feels like it's been a great way to expand not only accessibility, which is incredible, but also just the creativity with which we have to play um in the spectacle of it in general. Like projections are so much more popular now. We can have almost like cinema surround sound experiences for the audience that they didn't really have, prior, which is, I think, really exciting.
Well, and jumping off of what you just said, I think, the ability for projections especially has evolved so fast, so quickly, and it's now so much more affordable than it was even a couple of years ago. The college program where I'm teaching, we have 3 projectors that we can use if we need them now, and that sure as hell wasn't the case when I was an undergrad. So it's allowing us to sort of bridge this film, TV, podcast mentality in a very different way, which is, I think, important as as we're dealing with training, hopefully, the next generation of theater students where I teach. They need to be able to understand these technologies because their own income streams aren't going to be just doing live theater. They're going to run a gamut between audiobooks and stop motion work and theater and film and TV. So we need to be able to all be fluent in these things. And that's hard for an old fogey like me.
Okay, Tom, I'm not going to call you out on being old, but that's okay. So I'm going to actually ask you something differently, and in a different way. I also can't believe that Big Love was your first professional show.
Yeah.
So like, to me, I'm like, not only was I just honored to have any way, shape, or form be a part of that production, right? But now to know that like that was like your cradle show. Tom, you can see where this is leading. Graves. Cradles to graves. So but at what point, like as an artist, I guess I'm going to ask this of everybody. I guess at what point do you feel like you're in a cradle, or what point you feel like you're in a grave, right? Like when you approach a piece of work, if we're going to take the fool's journey about this, it's also shaping the arc of the conversation. How do you each approach theater when you are given the opportunity to do your own passion in theater? Do you go about it as cradle, or as grave, or as fool, or as wizard? What's your approach?
For me, I think it always has to start off in the cradle. I mean, I think an idea has to sort of start from something and then expand from. So each project is a chance to sort of re-envision what that journey is starting in and where it's ending and how you're working your way along that path. And to me, that's the exciting part, is the journey, which feeds into exactly what Em was talking about. I think we all need and crave that sense of communality, of a story taking us in a different direction. And so for me, I mean, as a designer, I work so much with visual media. Yes, I start with a text. I start with a director's vision of that text or interpretation of that text. And my way into a text from an emotional point of view is with something tangible. And I love being able to touch what I'm working in. I still draw by hand. I still draft by hand for the most part. I build models because, again, I am ancient. But there's something to me about the tangibility of what I do that then connects to the liveness of what theater is. And so there's a symbiotic granola tactile quality to what we do because it's live. And we need to be able to touch it, or we need to, for the audience to feel like they can touch it, even if we're not inviting them up on stage to fondle the set.
Fondle the set. Oh, that was funny. You got me thinking about the Fool's Journey, which I want to be coming at new theater, new jobs, new anything as close to the Fool as possible, while also knowing that I do have some wisdom behind me, because often I come in fearful. I come in fearful because of things they told you in college, where you weren't good at this thing, or that wasn't your strength, or I don't know if you're gonna really have success in that. So sometimes I come into it thinking, well, I want to do this right, and I think that I would like to start coming into things more curious than I already am, and more like the Fool, like unafraid to fail and unafraid to ask questions, because then that's when you get the interesting work to watch. And now I have some things to talk about in therapy, so thanks.
If I can't help other people fill out their therapy sessions, why am I here? Right? Like that's sort of anyone close to me will verify that that's what I'm that's how I function in their lives. Jack, what are you thinking on this cradle or grave idea?
Oh, I don't know. I actually feel like I want to hear what Spencer has to say.
Okay, Spencer, you're right. Spencer, what do you got?
I guess man, I guess the process that I've used to make theater work hasn't been so sort of self-conscious. I guess going into it, you always think that you understand more about it than you do, and that's usually a sign that you're working on something that's really cool and interesting. Is that as you continue to develop it, it's suddenly it means something other than what you thought it meant at the beginning. That's definitely my experience writing a play that's working, is that it's you start with an idea of maybe where it begins and where it ends and what the middle should sort of roughly look like, and then you start writing it, and then suddenly it's like, oh man, I don't need that end at all, like that was just totally irrelevant actually to where I'm going with this, and so I guess I don't know, to summarize, maybe like I abstain from the metaphor entirely. I'm a pawn in the metaphor instead. I guess it's an experience more than like an intention. I guess my work in the rehearsal room has to do with the other people in the room, and so you don't really know anything about it until you're there working with those people. Because yeah, that's the whole game. Yeah.
I mean, this isn't going on your permanent record. It's okay, right? We can don't worry, you're not going to be held accountable for this. So I mean, except for the fact that it will live forever on the internet. So it's interesting that you bring up pawn, right? Because a pawn projects this idea of being moved by other forces, right? Like, we don't think of the pawn's journey. The pawn doesn't have a journey of its own, right? It's manipulated by the experience in the process. So that's awesome. That's just again, right? Like, all the different ways one can see themselves in this is fascinating to me. Jack, I'm still fascinated. What do you got? Or do you want to abstain?
No, I mean, it's a mix of both. I think I share a lot of sentiment that M does, in that, sometimes you approach a room or a piece of creative theater from a place of fear, or a place of, I want to be right. Like, what's the right answer? And I used to train in karate. I trained for quite a few years. And one of the mantras was beginner's mind. Even if, you were a 4th degree black belt, you always had what is called the beginner's mind. That's why when you go to get the next degree of your black belt, you always go back and wear your white belt before you can get your black belt back. You wear your white belt for a whole year, or a significant amount of time, because you're going back to your basics and going back to the beginning. So I always try to remember that when I enter a rehearsal space, or when I'm looking at a piece of audition or something that's just brand new to me. Whether or not I achieve that is to be debated.
All right. We're surprisingly, we're not, right? Like, we're already at the bottom of the hour. And so I'm gonna actually head over to some of the questions that we have, that we sort of keep on deck, but I might also pepper them with some other things as we go. But these we generally try to, I don't want to call it a speed round, but um just think sort of I'd like to spend maybe 5 minutes answering these. So the first question I'm going to ask is one that I like a lot. So it's one of my go-tos. It's from Arlene Malinowski here in Chicago. And she asked, what do you use to sort of rejuvenate or refill your well, or your emotional and artistic creativity? Uh, what do you do? How do you rebuild yourself? How do you refresh yourself?
After working on something?
Yeah, or just when you're feeling burned out. Let me see if I
Yeah.
can actually find the. I knew I should have.
It sounds like that. What
So,
happens when you're low on?
as a theater maker, where do you turn for inspiration to refill the well? So what inspires you? What rejuvenates you?
I kind of have a boring answer, so I'll go first. This is classic. I take walks, I exercise, I use my body. I get out of my head. Yeah, I mean, the most productive times that I've had as a writer have been when I've been able to every morning go on a walk, and then also every afternoon go on a walk, because it just sort of resets things. But that's a classic, very boring answer.
Hard to stick to.
Good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. It is a good one. I recommend it.
It's hard to stick to. Is that what you said, Em?
Yeah. Discipline. We love it.
I'm an avid reader. So I will want to read something as far away from, like a craft book or like a training writing, anything that's sort of, or a play. Like I won't read a play. I will read the most out there fantasy. I will read incredible, like deep fiction. If I could spend, a couple of afternoons just in that kind of world and where I don't have to be any sort of artistic creation, like I get to enjoy somebody else's artistic creation.
I would agree with that. I mean, I think for me, I used to be an avid reader, and I miss reading a lot, because it's hard for me in the way that my world and life fit together now, to carve out time to just sort of sit down with a book, which makes me sound really strange. But being a professor and being a freelance scenic designer and being a husband and a dad, there's very little time. And as my cycle in working on shows as a designer is that there's always 2 or 3 things that are on deck next. It's never just here's one project and I'm done and I don't have anything to work on. It's okay, this one's up and the deadline for the next one is 3 days away. So I've got to switch my brain and get in mode for the next thing. And I also need to start thinking about the one that's coming up after that because I've got to start talking to that director soon. And so for me, it's not that the well hasn't run dry, it's that there's this sort of constant rejuvenation because each project is a different world. And I get so fascinated in researching each of those different worlds that by the time I'm having to cycle off of one and encapsulate it and set it aside, there's something else that's staring me down that I need to sort of get on board with. And so the cycle never ends, at least in the way that my workflow works.
That sounds very healthy and balanced.
Really? My wife would disagree.
I bet she would. For me, I get burnt out really easily. That's also probably because I say yes to too many things. We're working on it. But last year did 3 musicals, and musicals take everything out of me. And so I had to recover quickly between projects, and sometimes I just need to watch reality TV. Like sometimes I just need to watch the lowest form of art because that's all I can take. Other times I definitely like consuming other people's art and theater will rejuvenate me, but lately it's been like I can't watch enough Real Housewives. I literally can't. The Bachelor, I can't stop watching it.
Great
And then
British Baking Show for me.
What is it?
Great British Baking Show for me.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%.
Also highly recommend Below Deck.
Yes.
Yeah, I like stupid shit. And I think also just like the basics of sleep, feed yourself, hydrate, move your body always works. Whether or not I have the energy to do it, I don't know, but pretty much every time I do it, I feel better. So
All right. Okay. We have a watcher who's sent in a question. I don't know if it's someone's father has sent in a question. So so we, yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. My dad's not watching. So here's the question. It's is there something unique about Chicago theater compared to other cities or other places? What is it that makes the Chicago theater unique? Should I ask Tom to do that since he's currently the furthest away, or?
yeah, I wanted to. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Here's the thing. Yes. The short answer there is yes. Chicago is really special, and it was the decision for me and my family to leave Chicago is one of the absolute hardest things that I've ever had to deal with. Because for us, Chicago was supposed to be a 3-year waylay while I went to graduate school. It ended up being a 12-year journey of me figuring out who I was as a designer and as a theater artist and as an educator. And I am grateful to the bizarre and strange and deep world that Chicago theater is, because you have these ridiculously small mom and pop companies that are doing really strange and frankly disturbing work at places like the Heartland Studio, which I know is no more, and the old Bailiwick, which is no more, and the old House, and the old Defiant, and the old Hypocrites. And you have this constant cycle of regeneration of people moving on and people moving in, and a new generation creating something and taking it in a different direction, and then they split off and they go do these other things. And so there's always this cycle of internal rejuvenation in Chicago theater that not a lot of other theater cities have, and not a lot of other theater states and countries have. I do think that Chicago is incredibly unique and incredibly deep and incredibly vital. But at the same time, and I say this from Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a bit of a theater desert, to be perfectly frank. There are some incredibly intensely good people here, but we have a very odd sort of societal polemic in theater here, in a Southern semi-conservative kind of a way. But I do think that Chicago and to some degree London have a really interesting sort of dynamic between the pre-professional and the early professional, and the professional that has been doing storefront theater for 30 years and still is doing an amazing work. And I miss it deeply. It was still the right move for our family to move away, but I still miss Chicago on a pretty much daily basis.
Wow. Yeah, when I think about makes it difficult to think about that. There is, I'll say I haven't acted in a lot of other cities, right? The suburbs and then New York. And from that experience and from listening to other people's experiences, Chicago just seems to be, in most cases, pretty unafraid to be like ugly on stage. I find that the actors are willing to just like show up in the most real way. Whereas I was doing my first show in New York, and it was like the subject matter was rough. It was hard. It was about addiction and overdosing, and people were really concerned with not wearing makeup. And I was sitting there like, I need you to like look like shit. You know what I mean? Like this is an emotional, real experience. Like I don't give a fuck about your eyelashes. And I love these people, they're my friends. But I just don't care. There's something beautifully ugly about things, some shows that happen in Chicago. And then at the same time we also have like Broadway in Chicago. So there's something for everybody. But I will say, I joined the union this year, and on the daily, I almost regret it because I miss storefront so much, and I want more of it. And I have to pay my dues. They just emailed me today. So.
Mm-hmm.
Spencer, what do you got?
It's hard for me to answer the question because this is the only city that I've like practiced theater in. I've lived in other in other cities and been like working on plays of my own, but this is the only like professional community that I'm familiar with. I know like a lot about the mythology of Chicago theater, and I know, you know, I've heard what everyone else says about Chicago theater, and I've been here for a while. I've been here for like 7 years. But I mean, to me, at the moment, Chicago theater seems it's, you know, very much in transition and quite insecure compared to the Chicago theater that I arrived to in 2017. So I think for all of those reasons, it's hard for me to say like what sets Chicago apart. Although there is definitely something that sets it apart because otherwise everyone wouldn't be talking about it like this, you know. Yeah, I love the city of Chicago, and is probably like essential for making Chicago theater what it is. But I feel like I don't have the perspective to say it specifically.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I did undergrad and then I came to Chicago, so.
Even just talking to other people, though, it just seems like there's something. Maybe it's just like the Midwestern, like, type deal. We do a lot of shit for very little money, and we care about it as much as we would care about it if we were getting paid our dream salary. Like, the shows I've done for literally last year, I did something for like 5 people one night. Like, spent 2 hours getting into drag to do a 90-minute farce for 5 people who hated the show.
And you've never felt better.
And I was in it. Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, why? I couldn't tell you, but there's something that has kept me here, and there's something gritty, and I don't think that it's always. I think there can be toxic moments of we're being asked to do too much for too little. I think there are some like boundaries that still need to be really evened out. But I'm not sure actors are super good at boundaries. So I'm not sure how much that's going to change, but something about the city feels like earthy and like tangible.
Well, I would also add that I think that because there is so much available, the theater going public in Chicago is willing to take more chances on something strange and different and out there. I'm talking about this from a southern city that is politically more liberal, but financially very conservative. And so we have a very, very good Broadway in Charlotte touring entity. They have several venues in town, and there's always stuff going on. And we have a plethora, and I do mean a plethora, of really good community theaters. But there's only so much Neil Simon one can take. And there's nothing wrong with Neil Simon, please don't get me wrong. But
he tunes in almost every week. So I'm gonna keep my eye on the chat, Tom.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Oh, man, the foam boards are lighting up.
Oh my God.
But here's the thing, Chicago is a place where Sean Graney and the Hypocrites can do a 12-hour adaptation of the tragedies that are extant, and people will come out in frickin' droves to see it. It was insane with that show. Why would you want to go to spend 12 hours in a theater reliving 14 Greek tragedies simultaneously? But people do that. And you don't get that everywhere. We have here in Charlotte, we have a couple of really good sort of mom and pop storefront theaters that are doing really intelligent, smart work, and they're struggling at times to find audiences in a city that's 2.3 million in the metropolitan area. And that's not the case in Chicago. You've got, every weekend there's 60, 70 shows going on. And yeah, okay, some of them are going to be more full than others, but there's lots of options. And that sense of opportunity and the opportunity as a viewer to learn so many different points of view. I mean, the couple of times in recent years that I've come back to Chicago, I'll go and see 4 or 5 shows over the course of a weekend. And because, well, I'm a theater geek and I enjoy being an audience member, but it allows me a chance to see such different viewpoints of what theater is and how it can be made and what kind of venues it can be in and who is telling the stories. And that's not the case in community theater in a southern city.
I used to work at Hot Ticks, selling half-price theater tickets. Shout out. And one of my favorite things to do, tourists come through Hot Ticks all the time, and they'd be like, I want to see Kinky Boots. And I'd be like, okay, sis, but how about you go to Red Tape, rest in peace. They have a show where it's just 5 people in the audience and it uses all 5 senses. I would really try to use what tiny influence I had to get people to go see something that they were afraid of. And like, they usually went to see Kinky Boots, I'm not gonna lie to you, but some of them would go and then come back and thank me for sending them to the den for a show that will never sell out. You know what I mean?
I wonder if there is a metaphor or equivalent with food in the same way. Like Chicago is very much a food town too, right? And like there are always going to be people who are super excited about going to Cheesecake Factory, but also you can get on the Red Line and be in Chinatown and have most amazing food in some of the most horrible places where you're the only people eating and it's amazing. And you can go up to Devon Avenue and you can get some of the most fantastic Indian food, right? Like it's, and also like you can be someplace like, Logan Square and have all of it. And sometimes they're in dives and sometimes, but also is it the capacity of like, because we live in a city that has all of that, Tom, I'm not gonna, it's the equivalent of like, ooh, I'm to Applebee's today or Chili's or Zaxby's or like, because we have so many more, maybe we have a greater capacity to level up and go to someplace even broader, right? Like we have we have enough people that understand the liveness that you were talking about, Tom, to want to go experience for 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I think we also, like there was a long period of time at Strawdog where we used to talk about like, yeah, we make theater for theater makers. Like people come here to see shows because we make shows for people who make shows, and right, like it was a weird sort of niche energy for sometimes, and we realized we couldn't sell a lot of tickets to that, but but it's also that idea like there's sort of it's an industry town, so there's a built-in audience of industry as well, except when we're all doing shows. Okay, let's see. We're getting close to the top of the hour here. I want to ask one question more. And which one am I going to do? Oh, maybe two more. So Brian Amade, I'll just say from Wisconsin right now. What is the worst disaster you have seen on stage in front of an audience? Just disaster, be it prop, be it costume, be it actor, be it design.
So practical or the show was a disaster. I think there's a difference between things that go wrong on stage and things that are just wrong on stage, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, 'cause I've been in a disaster.
Oh, I've designed several, trust me.
Yeah, multiple times I've been in those.
I'm open. I think it's the idea of the thing that goes wrong, right?
Yeah.
Like even when it's, we've
Oh, I
all been
love it.
involved with things that were disasters, not by design, but like that couldn't be, they're just disasters, right? Like we all know those shows, but like, oh, that's a disaster. Like
I
that's
just saw one earlier this year. I saw the previews of Josh Groban's Sweeney, and the barber chair. He has this whole montage where he hits the pedal, and then the barber chair sends someone down the chute, and then they end up, on the floor, and it just like broke, and so he slits the throat of like the mayor dude, and he gets stuck on the chute and tries to like shimmy off, and then he had to crawl off stage dead. And Josh Groban did an interview recently talking about how that was a problem for all of previews, and they just had to have a backup of people like crawling off stage. It was embarrassing and hilarious, and we loved it.
I think mine was actually at Actors Theatre of Louisville a lifetime ago now. In the late 90s, at the time they had a resident scenic designer, and I was his assistant for 4 years, which is how I know Kyle. And the opening night of John Jory directed production of Noises Off, huge, gigantic set. And it had, the turntable and everything. And one of the offstage crew people during intermission in the shift from Act 1 to Act 2 they forgot to lock down one of the staircases, and so the actress at the top of Act 2 has to run up the stairs, and it has this sort of double back, and as she's running up the stairs, it's shifting further and further away from the platform, and you can see her as she is I was in the balcony, so I was almost eye level with her. As she was starting up the second part of the stair, you could see the look on her face of, holy shit, I have to get to that door in the next 4 seconds, and I'm going to have to leap across. And she did, and she made it. And the audience thought it was just part of the story. And those of us that were there knew that it was deathly, terrible things were about to happen. And so, I mean, I was there holding on to the front rail of the balcony going, oh my God, what's going to happen? And she made it. She was fine. And you could see Pablo, the assistant stage manager, run out on stage and push it into place and lock it in place. And the audience was none the wiser, but the rest of us that knew what was going on were just absolutely mortified at what could have happened. But I still think about that on a regular basis and laugh. Yeah. I don't think that actress did. I have a feeling there was probably a call to equity after that performance.
Yeah, I was going to say, we need to be empowered as actors, getting on my soapbox, to call hold during shows. Off the soapbox. Thank you.
Totally agree.
But also good for her.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any big disasters. I have one. I directed in college a production of Bug by Tracy Letts, and we had at the end of that play, Peter's running around the motel room dumping kerosene everywhere to burn the room and the bugs, and that kerosene whatever tank, obviously a key prop, was misplaced, as in it wasn't placed at all. And so it was like supposed to be in this closet, and the actor like opened the closet and just wasn't there. And so then he like turned it into like Our Town at the end. He was like miming, putting kerosene everywhere, which actually, like, it was fine. Like, because he's losing his mind anyways, it's like, it was whatever, but it was definitely a moment of like, oh my God, how did that happen?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've seen a disaster, but I've heard by word of mouth, like after I went to go see a particular show at Goodman, and this was years ago. It was the guy's like an MC, and he's supposed to be like riling up the audience, and it's also like a bunch of women. Like, I can't remember what the show was, but I saw it once by myself. And then my partner at the time went and saw it with somebody else. And as she was watching it, the guy who was the MC fell into the pit during um and definitely hurt himself, and then just like kept going and just like really tried to play it off, and it was like very obvious that he was just like not okay. But yeah, but for me, I haven't seen one yet, so
All right. That's good answers. Good answers. So that has taken us right to like the 10 o'clock point. So what I want to go ahead and do is I'm going to do some thank yous. I've got 5 thank yous, and when I come back, we're going to go to each of you about a recommendation that you might have for a book or a play or a script or a what have you. How's that? A what have you? So I got it's thank you 5. I got 5 thank yous. So let me see here. Thank you number 1 goes to officehours.global, Guy Cochran, Edwin Ruiz, Monda Machine, KBH Media for helping make all of the technical stuff and all of the technology of this show happen. Thank you number 2, shows made possible by Strawdog Theater Company and its ensemble members. Strawdog's run on a free theater model, which means that all of our main stage productions are available to everyone free of charge. And the only way we can make that happen is through generous donations from our community. You can find more information about donating to Strawdog or becoming a sustaining member at strawdog.org/donate. There's a link in the show notes as well, so please consider making a donation. Speaking of Strawdog Theater Ensemble members, thank you number 3 to Kyle Hammond for creating and producing the show. He's a big fan of the number 3. And he also had a birthday this week, and he's just a hell of a person. So, like, thank you, Kyle. Again, I said this publicly, but thank you for just existing, and happy birthday to you. Thank you number 4 is to our audience and our community, the folks who watch every week, whether it's live and throwing in questions or on delay and chime in. Thank you for participating. Thank you for watching. Without you, our community, this would just be 5 people talking to themselves. So thank you. And thank you number 5 to our amazing panelists for being here this evening and sharing your time and your energy and your thoughts and your passions and your artistry and your brilliance. It's been a pleasure talking to you. And now the last thing before we go, what do you recommend? Let's do this. We'll do the same alphabet. Tom, why don't you start us off? What do you recommend? You got a thing?
Pardon me. I think the last new play that I just sort of picked up and read that I wasn't working on really, really grabbed me, and it's called The Catastrophist by Lauren Gunderson. It's a 1-actor play, and she somehow has this magical ability to sort of both make me laugh and cry within the same like 4-minute spread. And she's done it in multiple plays, and I always love reading her new stuff. And this one's a couple of years old, but she basically puts her husband and his life and his relationship with his father, who had recently died, in a spotlight, and it somehow is both hysterical, and it's about the pandemic, and it's about being Jewish, and it's about being a parent, and about being the son of a dying parent. And it's just filled with some tremendous sort of life wisdom, all rolled up into a funny, harrowing 75-minute play.
Nice. Nice. All right. Spencer, what do you got?
I'm a huge fan, particularly recently, of Calendana, who's a young playwright who she just finished her MFA at Northwestern and is now in New York in Club Thumb's, like, a writers group. She's one play in particular which everyone should read is called Race Car, Race Car, Race Car, in all capitals. She's just like an incredibly inventive writer, and is, yeah, I think has just a long, successful career in front of her. So highly recommend looking her up. Calendana.
All right. Em, what do you got?
I'm gonna shout out a playwright friend of mine. Used to be in Chicago, now lives in New York. Sam Mueller, Mueller. They had a show called Laced go up at About Face last year, and I just think that they write in a very poetic way that not a lot of theaters are brave enough right now to tackle. It reads beautifully, and it is can be staged really beautifully. So you can find their plays on mostly on New Play Exchange.
Right. All right. Jack, what have you got?
Yeah, I just read a play recently from a class I am in. It's called Heroes of the Fourth Turning by Will Arbery, and it is so wild. And honestly, you just have to read it. I can't explain it.
That right, like, that's the thing, right? Like, when you read something like that, that's just so, it's not ephemeral, but it is like, oh my God, you just nailed the essence of theater on the page, right? Like, it defies description. You have to experience it. It's almost the equivalent of the liveness. Awesome. Fantastic. Those are great recommendations. That's awesome. Good list. All right. Humans, thank you. My God, it's good to see some of you again. It's good to meet others of you, and just thank you so much for spending your time with us. I don't know, are we going into a green room at this point, Kyle, or are we just wrapping that up? I don't know. Okay. Point being, thank you all for being here. Thank you all out there in internet land for watching and participating, and also, to those of you in the future who watch this, like these voices from the past. It's really interesting to think about that. Anyway, folks, sit tight. We'll wrap this up in a green room of our own, but for everyone else, I'm Hank Boland, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.